Picture this. It's 3:16 a.m. on a Tuesday night in Reno, Nevada. A single janitor pushes a mop across a sea of silent slot machines, the polished floor reflecting 1,000 dead lights. Deep in the concrete heart of this casino, the Reno Grand, sits a brand new Cerberus vault. It holds $11.4 million in weekend cash and high roller bonds. In exactly 60 seconds, Anthony Reed will execute the most perfect revenge heist in casino history. He'll steal $11.4 million, disappear without a trace, and frame 3 innocent colleagues for his crime. But here's what makes this story truly chilling. The Reno Grand will never know they were robbed by a ghost from the Bellagio. They'll hand their employees over to brutal consultants to be tortured and murdered. They will destroy lives, families, and futures and never once suspect that the man who cleaned their bathrooms was the same man who emptied their vault. This is the true story of a flawless crime and the terrible price of vengeance. How far would you go to reclaim a life that was stolen from you? And what happens when the perfect plan has the most imperfect and bloody consequences? Let me take you back to where it all began. 2 years before that cold Reno night, Anthony Reed was somebody, or at least he was on his way. At 34 years old, he was the kind of person management praised: quiet, meticulous, and a genius with security systems. He was a senior surveillance technician at the crown jewel of Vegas, the Bellagio. Anthony had worked for the Bellagio for 6 years, installing cameras, running diagnostics, servicing the electronic locks on the high-limit rooms. To the billionaires and the celebrities, he was just a man in a gray uniform, part of the wall, invisible, forgettable. But the wall has eyes and the wall has ears. During his tenure, Anthony saw everything. While fixing a camera feed in a private poker room, he'd watch a Saudi prince lose $5 million in an hour and laugh about it. While running cable in the ceiling, he'd listen to casino executives discuss which city council members they had on retainer. He knew the casino's true currency wasn't the chip, it was information and it was leverage. The conversation that ended his life in Vegas happened on a Monday in March. The Bellagio was installing the brand new Cerberus vault system. It was a state-of-the-art marvel: seismic sensors, biometric locks, magnetic plated doors, and a network that was supposedly unbreachable. And Anthony, their best tech, found a flaw. It was a tiny, elegant piece of code. A 45-second service heartbeat that rebooted the sensor array every 24 hours. During that 45-second window, the vault was blind, the magnetic locks were inert, the sensors were offline. A ghost could walk in, take the money, and walk out. The system would reboot and seal itself, none the wiser. Anthony did his job. He wrote a detailed 12-page report on the vulnerability. He documented the flaw, explained the risk, and outlined the simple software patch needed to fix it. He sent the report straight to his direct supervisor, an ambitious executive named Martin Thorne. The next morning, Anthony was called into human resources. Thorne was there, his face a perfect mask of professional regret. They had tracked a critical security breach to Anthony's terminal, an unauthorized attempt to test vulnerabilities. They accused him of being a security risk, of perhaps working for outside interests. Anthony was stunned. He was speechless. He pointed to his 12-page report, the one that proved his loyalty. Thorne shook his head slowly. "What report, Anthony? I never received any report." Anthony was fired on the spot. His gaming license was revoked, and he was blacklisted from every major house on the Las Vegas Strip. Thorne had stolen his discovery. He buried the report, claimed he found the breach Anthony had created, and took credit for patching it. He received a major promotion. Anthony Reed was ruined. 8 months later, Anthony Reed was nobody, literally nobody. Divorced, broke, living in a single-room apartment in Reno, 200 miles away and 1,000,000 miles from the life he'd known. He was earning $11.50 an hour as a night shift janitor at the Reno Grand, a solid mid-level casino with aspirations of Vegas glory. He was invisible again. But this time, invisibility felt different. It felt cold. It felt heavy. It felt like a weapon. He had worked at the Reno Grand for nearly a year, mopping floors, emptying trash, cleaning the filth from the high-limit bathrooms. To the dealers and the pit bosses, he was furniture, invisible, forgettable. But furniture has eyes, and furniture has ears. He learned the rhythms of the casino. While buffing the floor in the security office, he'd hear conversations about weak spots. While fixing a clog in the count room's staff toilet, he'd listen to the tellers complain about procedure. He was absorbing details, routes, schedules, and security habits. The memo that changed his life was pinned to a stained corkboard in the staff break room. It was dated October 14, 2000. Upgrade notice. The Reno Grand is thrilled to announce a full, state-of-the-art security integration with the Cerberus Vault system, the gold standard in casino protection. We are pleased to welcome Martine Thorne as chief consultant on the installation. Anthony stood there, mop in hand. The smell of bleach and stale coffee filled the air. His blood turned to ice. They weren't just upgrading, they were importing the exact same flawed system, and the man who had ruined his life was coming here to install it. Anthony continued mopping. His expression never changed, but inside, his mind was calculating. A blind vault, a man who deserved to be destroyed, and a building where he was, once again, the man no one ever saw. But knowledge without action is worthless. Anthony needed more than a motive. He needed a plan. And that plan began to take shape in his small, dark room under the light of a single flickering bulb. What followed were 6 months of meticulous preparation that would have impressed a military strategist and terrified a psychiatrist. If you could have seen Anthony's apartment in those months, you would have thought you'd walked into the mind of a madman or a genius. No maps, no red string, just code. On a second-hand laptop he'd bought for cash, Anthony built a perfect digital simulation of the Reno Grand's network. He was a ghost. As a janitor, he had access to everything, not the high-security areas, but the real building. The janitorial closets, the service hallways, the network rooms. He'd fix a leak in the ceiling panel above the IT office and map their entire server layout. He'd clean a spill under a manager's desk and plug in a tiny $5 USB keylogger, retrieving it a day later. He was no longer just a janitor. He was a digital phantom, moving invisibly through their electronic systems, learning their secrets. He gathered every password, every system vulnerability, every piece of digital evidence. And then he confirmed it. While running diagnostics from an empty office terminal, he found the Cerberus Vault's core programming. Thorne, in his arrogance, had never patched the flaw. Why would he? No one else knew about it. The 45-second service heartbeat was still there, beating every night at 3:17 a.m. But Anthony wasn't a criminal. He was a technician. How could he possibly move millions of dollars? The turning point came one night while he was cleaning the break room. The television was on, playing a grainy true crime documentary, the 1978 Lufthansa heist. The narrator's deep voice filled the empty room. In every great heist, the real genius isn't the one who steals the money. It's the one smart enough to make someone else take the fall. Anthony stopped mopping. He looked up at the flickering screen. The documentary explained how the masterminds never got caught. They let the foot soldiers take the blame, rot in prison, or disappear. They didn't just steal, they erased themselves from the story. That night, Anthony couldn't sleep. He replayed that phrase over and over in his mind. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about after the money. It was about who would be blamed. It was about revenge. He wouldn't just steal the money, he would burn Martin Thorne's world to the ground. He would make it look like Thorne's unbreachable system was breached by Thorne's own local team. By dawn, he had a new plan, one more dangerous, more brilliant than anything he'd imagined. He opened a clean text file on his laptop and typed 3 names. The robbery would happen, but 3 innocent people would pay for it. The next few weeks were obsessive. He used his janitor's master key to access the employee file room late at night. He stole personnel files one by one, took them to a service closet, photographed them, and returned them. He wasn't looking for flaws, he was looking for stories, stories that would make someone look guilty. Frank Miller. He started with Frank. Frank was a night shift security guard, ex-military, with a face like worn leather. He was also a compulsive gambler. He had seen him in the break room, frantically marking up a sports page. While cleaning the men's locker room, Anthony went through Frank's unlocked locker. He found 3 crumpled losing betting slips from a local bookie. He also found a stack of overdue notices from a payday loan company. Anthony pocketed one of each. He had his inside man, a man desperate for money. Jenna Hayes. Jenna was harder, a young, ambitious vault teller. She was clean, smart, and followed the rules. But Anthony was patient. He watched. He was invisible. He'd be buffing the floor in the service corridor just outside the count room. He noticed she always took her break 5 minutes late. He noticed she always carried her large purse into the count room, against policy. He needed to see inside. He fixed a loose ceiling tile in the bathroom above the count room. He drilled a hole no bigger than a pin and threaded a tiny fiber optic camera through it, a simple borescope he'd bought online. He ran the feed to a mini VCR in the ceiling space. He watched for 3 nights, and then he saw it, a quick, practiced move. While stacking used $100 bills, she would accidentally drop one into the open trash can. At the end of her shift, she would tie up the bag and place it by the door. On her way out, she'd retrieve the bill. It wasn't much, maybe $100 or $200 a night, but she was a thief, and Anthony had it all on tape. He had his complicit teller.
Then there was David, the new young IT tech. David was arrogant, lazy, and sloppy. He was the perfect technical expert for the fictional crew. While cleaning the IT office, Anthony saw it. A yellow sticky note stuck to David's monitor with the admin password. Anthony smiled. He took a photo of the note. He then used that password from David's own terminal to log in and create a high-level backdoor for himself. He logged out. The casino's own logs would now show that David Chen's account had created a ghost profile in the system. By the end of the month, Anthony had built his internal case file. 3 people, 3 stories. Not lies, just vulnerabilities. All he had to do now was connect the right evidence to the right crack. He didn't need hackers or police records. He had a mop, a master key, and instincts sharpened by years of being ignored. This wasn't just a robbery anymore. It was a stage, and the roles had already been cast. The night after Anthony finalized his list, he sat in his small, cold room. For the first time, his thoughts weren't on how to steal. They were on how to disappear. The heist was only half the plan. The rest, the part that really mattered, was making sure Anthony Reed died that night too, quietly, without a trace. But how does a janitor vanish? He had no access to fake ID networks, no corrupt officials. He wasn't a smuggler. He was just the guy who mopped the floors. And then, while cleaning the executives' offices, he saw it. Martin Thorne, the consultant, was complaining to the casino manager. "This place is a security nightmare. Your third-party vendors are a joke. Look at this." He held up a janitorial supply invoice. "Your janitorial supplier, Apex Cleaners, has been overbilling you for bleach for 6 months. $12,000. It's a shell company. You're being robbed." Anthony froze. He recognized the name. Apex Cleaners. It was a small local company run by a man he'd seen in the loading dock. A man who always met the dock manager in his car, never in the office. A man who dealt in cash. A week later, Anthony was in the back of a dimly lit bar in Sparks. He'd accidentally run into the Apex Cleaners owner. He didn't ask for IDs. He explained that he knew about the bleach invoices. He explained that he was the janitor who signed those invoices and that he could make a real problem for him. Or he could make it go away in exchange for a new life. The man didn't even blink. He was a low-level cog in an organized crime machine. Forging documents was easy. For $50,000 to be paid in cash after the heist, Anthony got a full package. Name, William Price. Origin, a small town in Oregon where the courthouse had burned down in 1995. Background, school records from a closed high school, job history from a defunct lumber mill. Noise, a valid driver's license, a social security number, and a small credit card with a $500 limit. Just enough to seem boring and real. 2 weeks later, Anthony held the documents. The heist hadn't happened yet, but the man who would pull it off, he already didn't exist. Let's go back to the night Anthony confirmed the vault flaw. He wasn't just looking for the 45-second window, he was looking for how to exploit it. He couldn't just stand there with a stopwatch. He needed to control it. He sat at David Chen's terminal, logged in as David Chen. He navigated to the Cerberus Systems admin panel. The service heartbeat was hard-coded. He couldn't stop it. He couldn't change it.
But he could see the network port it was tied to. Port 7B, a physical data port located in a service corridor. A port that was, by sheer, beautiful luck, right next to the janitorial closet on the 3rd floor. Anthony didn't need to hack the vault. He just needed to plug something in. He started building. He wasn't just a tech, he was a craftsman. He bought components online, had them shipped to a rented P.O. box. A simple Raspberry Pi, a network spoofer, a battery pack. He built a small, black box, no bigger than a deck of cards. He called it the Loop. His plan was simple. At 3:16 a.m., he would plug the loop into port 7B. When the vault rebooted for its 45-second heartbeat, his device would intercept the system offline signal. It would instead feed the security mainframe a continuous 45-second loop of the previous 45 seconds. To the security guards, to the computers, to Martin Thorne himself, it would look like the vault was sealed, secure, and online. But in reality, for 45 seconds, it would be a dead, open box. But theory wasn't enough. He had to test it. 1 week before the heist, 3:10 a.m., Anthony was in the janitor's closet. His heart was a drum. This was the real test. He plugged the loop into port 7B. He waited. 3:16:50. His laptop screen, connected to the network, showed the vault was secure. 3:17:00. The vault began its reboot. His device whirred. The screen still said secure. The loop was working. 3:17:45. The vault's internal system came back online. 3:17:46. The loop disengaged. The screen still said secure. He'd done it. He had a 45-second window of perfect invisibility. But the real discovery wasn't technical. It was internal. Anthony realized he could do this. The cold, methodical focus was back. The fear was gone, replaced by a pure, icy calm. He wasn't just studying a system. He was studying himself. And when he thought of Martin Thorne, he didn't see a man anymore. He saw a variable, a problem with a 45-second solution.
By the time Anthony finished his last test, the blueprint was final. There was no more doubt, no more sketches. Everything was ready. He knew exactly where he'd be, the third-floor janitorial closet. He knew when, 3:17 a.m. on the next scheduled Tuesday, the night after a long weekend, when the vault would be at its absolute maximum. He knew how. The loop into port 7B. 45 seconds of invisibility. But taking the money was only half the job. He needed to move it.
In a rundown storage unit 10 miles away, he'd hidden the next phase, a 1992 Ford Ecoline van. Battered, paint peeling, the kind of van people look through, not at. He had a plan. He wouldn't walk out the front door. He would use the casino's own arteries against it. In the sub-basement, there was a laundry chute. It was for contaminated linens, blood, waste, things the regular laundry service wouldn't touch. It led to a sealed, red biohazard dumpster in the loading dock, picked up by a specialty sanitation company at 4 a.m. Anthony had already cleaned that chute for weeks. He'd memorized the pickup schedule. The driver was always 10 minutes early. The plan was in motion. The tools were ready. The story was perfect. Now all he had to do was press start. Anthony Reed stood alone in the third-floor janitorial closet. The smell of ammonia and old mops. His backpack was zipped, black gloves on. His janitor's uniform was stiff and clean. 10 months of planning had led to this moment. In less than an hour, he would either be a ghost with $11.4 million or a corpse with a story no one would hear. But the setup had begun hours earlier. At 1 a.m., Anthony began planting the frame. He went to Frank Miller's locker. He planted the burner phone, pre-filled with frantic texts. He also planted the losing betting slips and the loan shark's overdue notice inside the burner phone's case. He went to Jenna Hayes' locker. He planted a small stack of $100 bills, money he'd saved himself, and a one-way bus ticket to Sacramento. It would look like her go bag. He went to David Chen's desk. He planted a USB drive in his top drawer. The drive contained a single file, a map of the vault's network, the one he'd downloaded using David's password. He had cast his 3 scapegoats. At 2:50 a.m., he made his way to the count room's observation hallway. He opened a service panel and disabled the VCR that was recording his pinhole camera. He retrieved the camera and the tape. The tape was now his insurance against Jenna. At 3:10 a.m., he was back in the janitor's closet. He waited. At 3:16:30, he opened the network panel. He plugged the loop into port 7B. His laptop screen glowed. 3:16:50. The network showed secure. 3:17. The vault rebooted. His device kicked in. The network still showed secure. The 45-second window was open. Anthony moved fast. He walked out of the closet, down the service hallway, and to the vault's outer door. He used his janitor's master key. Click. The door opened. This door was on a separate, simpler system, one he'd had access to for months. He was in the small antechamber. Before him stood the massive 20-inch steel door of the Cerberus. It was closed, but its magnetic locks were offline. He didn't need a key. He just pushed. The door swung open with a heavy, silent whoosh. No alarms, no lights, just silence. He was in. Rows of cash stacked on metal shelves. He didn't take it all. That would be too heavy. He took exactly what he had planned, $11.4 million in high-denomination, non-sequential bills. He stuffed the cash into 4 heavy-duty biohazard bags he'd hidden in his mop bucket. 3:17:28. He was packed. 3:17:35. He was out of the vault, pulling the heavy door shut. 3:17:40. He was out of the antechamber, locking the outer door behind him.
3:17:45. The vault's system rebooted. The magnetic locks engaged. The sensors came back online. The system log showed a perfect, uninterrupted, secure status. The perfect crime was complete. Now, the extraction. He placed the 4 heavy red bags into his large janitorial cart, covering them with dirty mops and rags. He took the service elevator down to the sub-basement. He moved with the janitor's slow, bored pace. No one looked at him twice. He reached the contaminated linen room. He opened the chute. One by one, he dropped the 4 bags into the darkness. He heard them thud into the sealed dumpster 2 floors below. At 3:50 a.m., the sanitation truck arrived, 10 minutes early, just as Anthony knew it would. He watched from a basement window as the truck's arms lifted the red dumpster, emptied its contents, and drove off into the night. He had planted a small, magnetic GPS tracker on that dumpster a week ago. He knew exactly where it was going. Then came the final touch. Anthony returned to the 3rd floor. He walked to the main security office. He slid an envelope under the door. Inside was an anonymous note. "Thorne's system is a joke. He's letting his own people rob you. Ask Frank Miller, security, Jenna Hayes, vault, and David Chen, IT. They're not as smart as they think." At 4:45 a.m., Anthony Reed clocked out. He walked out the employee exit, got into his 10-year-old car, and drove away. He was just a janitor, finishing another long, hard night. By 6:30 a.m., the casino was in chaos. The morning vault team had arrived, opened the door, and found nothing. An empty room. The casino manager went pale. They checked the logs. Secure. They checked the cameras. Secure. It was impossible. They didn't call the police. The Reno Grand had connections. They called their consultants. 2 men in dark suits arrived within an hour. They were not police. They were fixers, interrogators, men who specialized in making problems disappear. Then a guard found the note under the door. The consultants didn't ask questions. They acted. They sealed the building. They went to the lockers. In Frank's locker, they found the burner phone and the betting slips. In Jenna's locker, they found the cash and the bus ticket. In David's office, they found the USB drive. They checked his terminal logs, and they found the ghost profile he had created. Within 48 hours, the casino had issued its own justice. What happened next was exactly what Anthony had planned, and exactly what would haunt him forever. Frank Miller was owned first. The consultants didn't even bother. They called his loan shark. They told him, "Your boy Frank Miller just stole $11 million from us. We think he did it to pay you. We want our money." The loan shark's men found Frank at his apartment. They tortured him for 2 days, demanding money he never had. His body was found in a ditch. His only crime was a $5,000 debt. David Chen was taken by the consultants. They held him in a basement room. He was just an IT kid. He broke in 20 minutes. He confessed to everything. He admitted he built a spoofer, that Frank strong-armed him, that Jenna handled the cash. He invented a whole story, just to make the pain stop. They didn't kill him. They handed him over to the police with his confession. He was a public scapegoat. He was found hanging in his cell a week before his trial. The suicide note just said, "I'm sorry." Jenna Hayes fled. She saw them take David, and she ran. She cashed in her bus ticket and disappeared. The consultants put her face out to every connection they had. She was caught 2 states away, trying to get a job as a waitress. They didn't torture her. They just showed her the videotape, Anthony's tape, which he had mailed to the head of security, the tape of her skimming. They told her she could either be a witness or a co-conspirator. She agreed. She gave a full, tearful, and completely false testimony, implicating Frank, David, and Martin Thorne. She was given a new name and a new life. She had traded 3 lives for her own. And Martin Thorne? The casino sued him for $50 million. His unbreachable system was a fraud. His reputation was annihilated. He was fired from the Bellagio, blacklisted from every casino in the world. He lost his house, his wife, his career. Anthony's revenge was surgical. Thorne was left with nothing. Meanwhile, the real perpetrator had vanished. At 5 a.m., Anthony drove to the edge of the Reno City dump. The GPS tracker showed the sanitation truck had just dumped its load. He was dressed in filthy clothes, a homeless man. He climbed the fence, walked through the mountains of trash, and found the red bags. He loaded them into his van. He drove 200 miles into the desert. He buried the money in 6 different locations. Then he drove to the bus station. He left the van with the keys in it. He took a bus to Portland, Oregon. He waited 1 month. Then he drove back, dug up the money, and met the man from Apex Cleaners. He paid him $50,000 in cash. Anthony Reed no longer existed. His name was William Price. 6 months later, a man named William Price appeared in Portland, a quiet businessman, successful in online retail, clean background. What his neighbors didn't know was that William Price was Anthony Reed, a former technician turned ghost, living off laundered casino money. The transformation had taken months. He learned the subtleties of a new life. The money was cleaned methodically through small business purchases, cryptocurrency, and shell company investments. He bought a modest house, a reliable car, and volunteered at a library, fixing their computers for free. Nothing flashy, nothing memorable. A man engineered to disappear in plain sight. But invisibility had a price. At night, he thought about Frank Miller's wife, who he had seen in a news clip, weeping. The look of sheer terror in David Chen's eyes as he was dragged away by security. The cold, dead soul of Jenna Hayes as she lied on a witness stand to save herself.
Anthony hadn't just framed them. He'd written them into a death sentence. He had created the play, and the consultants and loan sharks were just the actors. And what haunted him wasn't just the blood, it was the simplicity. The plan had worked too well. His revenge was perfect, and it cost 3 people their lives. The only thread left was the money. The casino had its suspects, they had their corpses, they had their lawsuit, but they never found the $11.4 million. That was the one loose end that never got tied. The one question that still echoed through the empty vault in Reno. Where is the money? They never knew Anthony Reed existed, and William Price never gave them a reason to look twice. The perfect crime didn't leave witnesses. It left a question, and a man who could never answer it, even to himself.